Quack, quack. Adventure time. Come on and grab your friends. Jake the dog and Finn the human. Adventure time. Come on and grab your friends. Jake the dog and Finn the human. Adventure time. I love that. Well, I had to do that because YouTube would get me otherwise. All right, my spiritual babies. We are back again. This is the second time I'm doing this video because the YouTubers got me the first time. And it's the second time I'm doing this video. And I got to start with a rant because the last one started with a rant because it all started about a rant. But first a prayer. In Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. God of Rock, thank you for this chance to kick ass. We are your humble servants. Please give us the power to blow people's minds with our high voltage rock and reason. In your name we pray. Now that's a technically correct prayer, thanks to Dewey Finn from School of Rock. It's my favorite prayer. I think I'm going to do it forever. And it's technically correct, so you can't say anything. All right, I love Adventure Time. All right, so kitties, spiritual babies. It all started as a rant. I have to have two rants because, of course, the reason why this is the second time I'm doing the video is because I didn't know, and I had this problem that there's a word that the internet, our techno creep, aristo creeps that are in charge of us censor on the YouTube. And this has got to stop. There cannot be censorship in America. I'm going to sue these creeps for tortious interference with it with a business. If anybody more than me just actually ever listens to this or watches this, but there's a word that we're going to refer to as the A word. It rhymes with Portner. Rhymes with it's A, and it's a bit, well, it's actually a word that it's when it came up with it, when the left came up with it, was to make it like scientific, what they were going to do and how it's serious and it's not what it really is. And so they came up with a word to hide what it really is anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the original word, which original way to describe this procedure, because it's not a medical procedure. And so instead of saying the A word, I'm going to say what it really is, which is baby murdering. Okay, so the internet doesn't want me to talk about the A word because the YouTube will snatch me up, the algorithm will snatch me up and not let me get onto YouTube. Then I'll just refer to it as baby murdering because I don't think they have that down in the algorithm yet. So we won't be referring to the A word, but when I do, I'll either say the A word or use its more accurate terminology, which would be baby murdering. Okay, so that's that. Now it all started in a rant because I was on my way to do our psychohistory, and just wanted to do a little psychohistory about probably I was on my way to do the next episode, which is going to be on that nitwit Nietzsche. Ran across the internet though and made a mistake. Looked at Wikipedia for something, and I had to laugh my ass off because they were referring to Margaret KKK Sanger. I hope that YouTube doesn't get me on that one. Margaret KKK Sanger. She only, because they refer to her as is only going in front of, appearing in front of the KKK one time. Now we all know that Snopes is for dopes, and how when they say, she wasn't in for the extermination of the black races, which is ludicrous, right? But what's equally ludicrous is Wikipedia saying that Margaret Sanger only went to the KKK meeting one time, right? Now that is out and out fact checking. What we're going to do now, out and out fraudulently misrepresenting it. It was not one time, and it was 17 times. And the reason why I know that is because I actually, being the historian that I am, I actually read the original sources and don't rely on Wikipedia or Snopes for Dopes. I actually read her autobiography in it. And in it, she's bragging about going to the KKK 17 times. And it didn't happen. You're not going to get an accurate perception of this if you read on Wikipedia. Because the reason why she stopped going, in Wikipedia it says, she found the KKK, and basically there were women, and she went to do a presentation and a speech to these women. And she found them like lowbrow and Southerners, and it makes it like she was put off by them. But no, that's not what happened at all. No. The KKK just weren't radical enough for her. They weren't crazy enough. So basically, if you listen to Wikipedia, it's like, oh, it was just an accident. I mean, we've all been there. It's all happened to us, right? We go to a meeting and we think it's where it's all about progress and helping your fellow man. Next thing you got these Southern ladies and they're pulling out their tea and they talk with a funny accent. And the next thing you know, they put on their hoods and they're talking about, showing up on black people's front lawns, burning a cross and lynching them, right? It's all happened to us, right? We've all been there, right? And then what do we all do? Let's give it to Wikipedia and the Margaret KKK Sanger fans. Let's give it to them. You say, listen, we've all been there. It's all happened to us, right? We're all sitting there in a meeting, surrounded by the FBI. Going, let's do this, let's go do some domestic terrorism, blah blah blah. Next thing we know, and they're saying all these crazy things about burning crosses and killing black people, and we're like, I just better nod my head and go along, right, and try and get the hell out of here. Going, oh yeah, get the blacks, oh yeah, until I can, kind of like slink away and say, oh boy, that was a mistake. Those people are crazy, right? But that's not the way it happened, because she went the first time. You might be able to say that the first time, right? We'll give her the first time, right? But the second time that happens, where you go to the Southern women and they break out the tea, and the next thing you know, they're breaking out the white ones. The second time, and the third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time, and a sixth time, and a 17th time. Come on, man. As the president says, come on, man. By the 17th time, it's not an accident. You're leading the Klan at this point, right? But basically, that's not even what happened, because basically, she did it 17 times because she's trying to get the Klan to do something. And let's face it, the Klan just wasn't crazy enough. Now, yeah, they marched through New York City, and there's 2 million of them, and they were, lynching poor black people who just disagreed with them, But the Klan's position, to her was, to Margaret KKK Sanger is, she starts spouting about exterminating on people. They're like, you know what, Margaret KKK Sanger, you and your eugenics, you're just too crazy. We just want to intimidate the blacks. We just want them to keep them, for them to keep in their place. You want to exterminate them all. You, Margaret KKK Sanger, you're too crazy to be in the Klan. And that was actually the breakdown that she had with the Klan. Is it not that she, that she was offended by them in any way, shape, or form? No. It's that they weren't radical enough for Margaret KKK Sanger and her. I almost said it, and her baby murdering movement that was at the time called the American Birth Control Movement. Anyway, so I saw that on the internet, and I go, oh no, I'm gonna have to do something about that, because we have to set that straight. And this is from the actual. So I did a deep dive on it. Now there is a video. There is a picture of Margaret KKK Sanger and the Klan behind her. That's a complete fake. I know, because when I was doing the deep dive on that movement, that didn't even exist. I'm thinking, like, what did I miss that? That's an internet fake. What's not an internet fake, which is disappeared from the internet, thanks to the robber baron tech titans that we have, and the aristocreeps that we have running the censorship on the internet, is two things. One of them is the actual letter called, wrote and signed to the various ministers called the a Negro Project, which we will get to, which is why Snopes for Dopes is so funny. And then the other thing is her plan that she testified in front of Congress, where she was testifying in Congress that what she should do is what we need to do is get up all the undesirables of society, the Italians, the Jews, the blacks, and the Hispanics. I mean the Slavs, and all the mentally unfit and all the criminals, and put them on, quote, farms upstate. Now, of course, the movement that she was leading in America had a similar movement over in a place called Germany, and it was the same thing. Only they called them concentration camps over there. So, both movements, listen, they were fans back and forth. There was a lot of thoughts back and forth. And, Globetrotter, Margaret KKK Sanger, was over there and was a big fan, and they were a big fan of her. And a certain, guy with a little mustache was a big fan of hers. The movements were simpatico. They were the same movement over in Germany and as they were over in America. And so even though she starts out the American birth control movement in 19 something, in the 20s and the 30s, by 1940, when it turned a little bit dark, I mean, like obviously dark, that she had to change the movement to Planned Parenthood. 1942, got a new name for it, and that's the movement that we're going to talk about, because the founder of Margaret KKK Sanger, it's really a misnomer to call it KKK because she was just too crazy to be in the KKK. But I think that it has the advantage of avoiding the censor, and so if that's what they're going to do, I'm going to do it. If they're going to censor me, I'm going to try and skip that censor by making it Margaret KKK Sanger. So they changed the name and to the Planned Parenthood, and that's the movement that we're going to look at, and its founder, Margaret KKK Sanger. So the we're doing psychohistory. We're going to start with, we have the psychohistory, and the idea we're going to try and make it a thing, right, even though it wasn't a thing, because there's a lot of analytical evaluation that taking somebody's psychology and then seeing how the breaks in it and the sins that they're committing. We're going to call them sins, but the mental diseases in them, in the particular person, gets translated from them onto the movement at large, and then rings like a bell in the adherents that then flock to that movement and then become prosecuting that movement. So the movement's founder would be Margaret Sanger that we're looking at. We're going to see the movement of Planned Parenthood. We're going to see it on its adherents today in the modern Democrat Party, right? And how that evil in her gets translated in the larger movement, then through time, and gets metastasized and spread into further people. So it's the second time I do this video. So we should compare the first and second, but then the second one you won't even be able to see because the algorithm snagged it when I was trying to put it up. So psychohistory. So now I came across a quote from good old Eleanor Roosevelt, and she says, on the topic of that we're dwelling into, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. So she would say that because we're talking about people instead of ideas, then she would not be a fan of psychohistory. She would say that I am a small. What I'm doing is a thing that a small mind would do. But you know what? I don't care, because I've never been a fan of Eleanor Roosevelt because Eleanor Roosevelt was a nitwit, and not only that, she was a virtueless woman, and that's part of the problem, because it was about that time period too. She was one, as a virtueless woman, of course, she hid the fact that her husband was having all these affairs, and she hid the fact that he had polio from the American people, because she was all okay with with all the money and all the prestige that went along with that, so she could hide all these the truth from the American people. And so she was literally the enabler of the dictator of America, because he's the only president we've ever had who would never get out of office. He literally had to die before we could get him out of office. In fact, he was, of course, what kind of nut are you to think that you're so much greater than Jefferson and George Washington and Adams, who, Jefferson and Adams, they restrained themselves to two terms because that's what old George Washington did, and nobody was as great as George Washington, but good old Eleanor Roosevelt and good old Roosevelt thought that they were Roosevelt thought that he was so much greater than Washington that he had to have a third term and had a fourth term for 4 whole terms as president. And they had to pass an amendment so that didn't happen again. So I'm not a big fan of Eleanor Roosevelt. And let's face it, listen, ideas. I don't care if the highest end physics you could think about. Ideas aren't that complex. Events can be complex. You look at events can be something to discuss. What is she saying? Did 9/11 wouldn't be something to be discussed? Or Pearl Harbor wouldn't be something to be discussed? But people, here's where she's wrong, because she's got this completely ass backwards. People, I find they're the most complex things in the universe. And that was my rant, and that's where I got off on the earlier rant, virtue-less women. The problem with at that era were the virtue-less women. What do I mean, by virtuous women? People that women are like this. They're anti-feminine. They are, we're going to reject all the things that God has made women to be, right? We're gonna be anti-family. We're gonna be baby murdering. We're gonna be sex. Oh, all the promiscuity you can have, right? It's all so good. Oh, look, we're not gonna be tied down by any man. Ooh, girl power, girl boss, right? All that nonsense. So, let's game this out. I saw this nitwit actress saying, I'm not gonna wait for any man, I'm just gonna get inseminated, right? She's having babies, and yeah, you can have a baby today without having a man, although that you're gonna have a huge problem. It's not gonna be a baby it's not gonna wind up the way you think it does, because it takes 2 people. I don't care if it's the man and the woman. I don't care if the man becomes a woman and the woman becomes a man. It takes 2 opposite extremes of the nurture and nature, right? 2 opposite extremes of how to deal with the world and create the world, right? Create the universe inside. So you have a child. Child runs across the room. Child trips on his shoelace. One, usually the mother, but not always the mother. Sometimes it rolls or switch. 90% of the time, or 80% of the time, the mother picks up the child, wipes away the tear, pat the child on the back, hugs the child, nurtures the child. Father says, kid, next time, tie your sneaker, and that won't happen. But you need both. It takes 2 to raise 1 kid. Okay, I don't care who. So you can have. So let's game this out. So women no longer need men. Well, pretty soon men aren't going to need women, right? You're going to have artificial wombs, and more than that, you're going to have Alexa or a Siri or whoever, right? Whoever the computer pro AI is, to raise them. And they're going to do, so they're going to be rocking the baby, and little Alexa's going to be talking to them, putting all the communication skills in them, and all that, and all skills them. So men aren't going to need women. Now, in that dopey utopia future that you're going to have there, which one of those sexes becomes completely useless at that point? Because I don't care what you say. Okay, women in the physical world are useless. They don't do anything other than raise children and create families, right? Now, you can't say that. Yeah, I'm going to say it. So because 99.9% of the bricklayers out there are men, 99% of all of the engineers out there are men. Yes, you get that wonderful, amazing 1 woman out of 8 or so who's the coolest of all chicks, because she talks about comic books and she talks about physics and engineering, stuff like that, and she's not discriminated against by the male population, because she's the coolest of all women. They all want to hang out with her because they can talk to her, and they're not being a mean girled by all the evil females out there. No, that's another fraud, lie, another fraudulent lie. No. She's the coolest of all girls, but that 1 out of 8, because it's a 1 out of 7 at least, because I know right? Take that one out of the equation, and what do you have? You have the entire world being run by men, because men make the world, and men make the world work. I guarantee you right now, there's some poor man, some poor dumb son of a bitch with his toes freezing in his boots, standing by a switch to turn it on so you can have amazing light at night, or turn on your blow dryer, baby, and blow dry your hair. So it's an absolute fact that it's men who make the world run. And the reason why is because men make worlds. Men are world makers, and men are world breakers. And women make the universes. And they make, because that's what a human being is. You ever see that when they show pictures of the universe, of like a universe from far away, and you see this amazing, unbelievably complex, galaxy with untold number of millions and billions of stars. That's what a human being is, and women make them. And I don't care if the woman's never had a baby. When she makes a family, a household, that's what she does, because the men are like planets who orbit that, right? It's the woman who creates that family. It's the woman who is the center, and they create the most impossible thing in human culture to create, and civilization to create, that we would not have. The reason why they say that behind every great man is a woman is because a woman created that man, and a woman creates that world, the family that man lives in. Okay, they do the most impossible task in all human history. It's not physics, it's not quantum, it's not an idea, it's not any of that. The most impossible task you can learn, which is beyond a physics PhD, is the creation of a human being, and that is done by the women. And so it's the women who do that in this society. It's beyond any PhD. It's the hardest task in human society. It takes 20 years. Most of it's all done by the women in the beginning, and then men when they create the universe, teach the child how to interact with the world, because that's their purview. Universe, women, world, man. So in that gamed out future, where you don't need couples, you don't need women and men together, and you destroy marriage, who wins that? It's ridiculous, right? Nonsense. But that's part of the evil of Satan right now that you can tell is it's the lack of creativity of people who sup of Satan and sup of evil, because we now know it's not a slippery slope. We now know that it is an elevator shaft straight to hell, right? If you can't just sip of evil and then expect nothing to happen to that, or just a little bit. No, you go straight to hell. And the early so-called feminist movements were anti-feminine, and these 1900s, this 19th time period we're talking about, 1900s, 19 teens, the 1920s and 1930s, where Margaret KKK Sanger started her movement. You had a lot of these feminist, rich socialites going around, and she's a perfect example of that. So anyway, back to psychohistory. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. Eleanor Roosevelt had an ass backwards. I think I'm going to go with Aristotle, who said, men start revolutionary changes for reasons connected with their private lives. Which one of those I'm going to take? A virtueless woman named Eleanor Roosevelt, or the ancient Greeks? Again, proof positive that I'm right. And we're going to leave the big thinking to the ancient Greeks. We're not going to listen to Eleanor Roosevelt because she's completely ass backwards. So anyway, Margaret Sanger. Who was Margaret Sanger? Margaret Sanger she grew up in a large family. Her father was a, quote, skeptic, which is a term for atheist. And that's where probably the evil began. Because, there's I'm going to do a whole thing on atheism, but there's multiple ways to become atheist. One way, of course, is to be a bunch of atheists are horribly hurt by something in life. Life is tough. It's very hurtful. It can really break you, and they turn their back on God because something horrible has happened. then there's the other category of atheists, the sick bastards like Saint-Just and Marquis de Sade, who were the perfect atheist, and Stalin, who the reason why they're atheists is because they like hurting people, right? And then there's another category of atheists that are like bad parent, bad father. If you have a Christopher Hitchens, these are the Christopher Hitchens. He might be in the category with Saint-Just because he was a creep. But this category of atheists is they have a bad father. They have a bad relationship with their father. So if you have a bad relationship with your father, your earthly father, well, the earthly father, your earthly father stands in place of the heavenly father, right? And so that's the father's role in the family. One of the roles of the father in the family, besides interacting with the world, is to stand in place of the heavenly father. So if you have a problem with your father has a problem with, or your father has a problem with the heavenly father, then that evil is going to translate, because obviously, if you have a problem with your heavenly father, you got a problem with your earthly father. You got a problem with your heavenly father. So that's where this evil probably began, in her relationship with her father, and her father was a quote skeptic / atheist. That's where the evil began, and then it metastasized, right? So anyway, she has 3 kids, gets married, she has 3 kids, and completely abandons them, right? And she starts this cause, becomes a rich socialite, going globetrotting all over the place, sleeping around with, H.G. Wells and all these other people, and rejects her femininity. And that's just it. It's even though they call it feminism, it's not. It's a rejection of the most important roles of a woman, and they devalue them. Like, who are they to devalue these roles? These are impossible things to do. Like I said, the most impossible task of all human history is the creation of another human being, and that because from that human being you transmit the culture and society and every advance that there's ever been. So anyway, part of the evil of, that you're in Satan's, you're Satan's bitch when you lose all creativity, and you're the anti of all good, right? And so she becomes the anti of all good. And like I said, you don't just sup of it; you go all the way down. You go all the way down the elevator shaft. So she's got this cause of birth control, but it's not that. What it is she's this rich Anglo-Saxon. She sups of the evil, and was running around that time was this science of eugenics. And we got to remember, that was an actual science. The way global warming is a science today. the way phrenology, like you can tell the lumps of somebody's head, what their their intelligence, what they're thinking. Was a science back then too. Well, just like that, like we look at that, like that science. So too was science of eugenics. Now this is just out and out racism. It's out and out survival Darwinism, which is a religion, right? It's the religion of, oh, look, Anglo-Saxon are so much purer and better than everybody else, right? And you got to look at the stupidity underlying this, and the lack of awareness, right? You can say what you want about Thomas Jefferson, but he recognized that there were Indians who were smarter than any whites, and they were physically stronger than any white put together. He was aware of the universe. This creep was aware of any of that. Like, she never ran into any Oriental, because I like that word better than Asian, who was smarter than her, or any, all her globetrotting, never ran into any blacks that were smarter than her. What kind of arrogant twit do you have to be that way, right? Jefferson famously was written to by a mathematician who said, "Oh, look, I'm as smart as any white guy." And Jefferson, yeah, you obviously met him and said, you're right. You changed his mind on that. Anyway, so her sins. So she creates this. So she's and what is this Darwinian religion? It is literally the opposite of the culture and the Christianity. And Jesus broke down the tribalism with the stories of the Good Samaritan and administering to the Samaritans. Now, we've lost this today, because when we say the Good Samaritan, we think that in a positive light, but it wasn't at the time of the Bible's writing. a thing. It wasn't a possibility because it was an oxymoron at the time. Because to say Samaritan was to say a racially impure person, and it's so at that time you had the Babylonian captivity, but before that you had the Assyrian captivity. You had the Assyrians come in, wipe out the 10 northern tribes of and Judah with their capital in Samaria, and then take off a bunch of Jews. The Jews who were left intermarrying with the Assyrians, and they became to the Israeli Jews, to the Jews, racially impure, and so they weren't even allowed to go in the temple. Foreigners could go to the temple, Samaritans couldn't. So the Samaritans were the Jews' Jew. So the analogy would be to the Germans, the Jews were making them racially impure. To the ancient Israelis, the Samaritans were making them racially impure. So to say the word Samaritan was a slur. Even if you were a Samaritan, you knew that you were looked down at by everybody else, right? They were the Jews' Jew. So we've lost this today because we say Good Samaritan, we think, oh, look, it's a Good Samaritan law to protect people from helping people because we think all Samaritans help people. The reason why is because that's our culture. Why? Because of the story. Well, anyway, you get this lawyer, evil lawyer, definitely evil lawyer, who tries to trick Jesus, right? He says, oh, this goody two-shoes Jesus, I'm going to get him into saying something. I'm going to get him like this. So, the Ten Commandments said, thou shalt not steal from thy neighbor. Here's Jesus running around going, oh, love your neighbors. He's talking to the Samaritans. He's administering to the Samaritans. He's curing the Samaritans. He's curing all the Gentiles. He's doing all these things. So this lawyer, this Jewish lawyer goes, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. And he says, oh, he's so smart. Jesus, who are our neighbors, right? And Jesus tells him a story. He says, oh, I'll tell you. Because he knows the evilness in this guy's heart, because he's a lawyer. He goes, so he tells him a story. He says, well, a man is on a journey, and he's set upon by robbers who beat him nearly to death and steal all his stuff and leave him in a ditch. Along comes a Levite, meaning a priest, right? The priest crosses the street and goes along his way. Along comes another Levite, another priest, religious, wasn't a priest, religious. He crosses the street and hurries on by, right? Along comes a Samaritan. Remember what I said? That would be a bad thing back in that day. Samaritan sees the man, sees that he was beaten by robbers, treats his wounds, picks him up, puts him on his donkey instead of him riding it, takes him to an inn. After he's dressed all his wounds, he says to the shopkeep, shopkeep, here's a denarii. It should be enough for a week. I'll be back this way. Treat him, feed him, take care of him while I'm gone. I'll come back this way and I'll pay you if he needs anything else, right? And then Jesus asks, of those three people, who followed the scripture, right? Mic drop, right? And so that story becomes the Good Samaritan, which breaks down the tribalism of because it's so fundamentally a shock to the system. It's like it's if you wanted to say it's like today it would be if Jesus was a German, saying it to them, and they replaced it with the Jews, and then all of a sudden the Jew is the good guy, right? If he's being questioned by so that's the shock that he did to break and destroy tribalism. That then as it gets repeated over 2,000 years, and Paul comes along and says, we're no longer Gentile or Jew, we're no longer male, female, we're no longer slave, we're no longer free, because we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. You get down the breakdown of the of tribalism that you get today, the Catholic Church, which means universal for everybody, right? The message is for everybody. The good news is for everybody. That was reacted to and constantly being pushed back at by evil in the form, in this case, of Margaret KKK Sanger and her abject racism. So when she looks at it, she looks at it as she looks at these people as being inferior. They developed this so-called science of eugenics, and you got to laugh about it. How there's positive eugenics and negative eugenics. Oh, we don't want to exterminate all these people by rounding them up and putting them on farms upstate until they all die, like the Germans are doing. No, we're a positive eugenics. Yeah, except you still want the same thing, right? So anybody who is not perfect like them, blonde and blue-eyed, they get on the list of people to be. You're either or you. So positive eugenics. So anyway, this nut has this evil idea, and she wants to. And what happens is Margaret Sanger. So she has this. She's got this this cause of birth control, and in one day at her office comes in a poor little babushka Italian woman with 9 kids, and so it's all the Italians' fault. And so she says, "Oh, my husband's he's no good. He's mean to me. He won't stop having sex with me. I've got 9 kids." And the evil thought occurs to this evil virtueless woman. Says, wait a minute. That might be a way to get rid of these Italian Slavs, Jews, and blacks, these undesirable people, because she sees a fault line in them, in these communities, that she can apply pressure to, that she can maybe trick them into, and I can't say the word, right, baby murdering, I'll say instead, into baby murdering their babies, and breaking up their families. And that would be a good way to do positive eugenics and get rid of the undesirables. Now, it is a fact that I think weeds, where she calls them, there is a quote where she says she calls these undesirable people the weeds of society. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't been able to track that down the way I have other things, like the Negro Project, which definitely is a thing. But she sees this fault line, and she begins so-called birth control. But what it is, it's baby murder. But she has a problem, because it's a good argument for the actual Catholic Church, because the Italians and the Slavs and the religious Jews, they had a institutional bulwark against baby murdering and the baby murdering movement. And what it was from the very beginning, the beautiful, wonderful, blessed Catholic Church has been against baby murdering. Of course, why? Well, because they know that a human being is ordained by God, made by God, and that and as Jesus had said, if you would do harm to one of these little ones, referring to the children, then it would be better if a lodestone was tied around your neck and you were thrown into a lake about what's going to happen to you when you get to him in heaven, right? Now that's sweet Jesus saying that, right? So the Catholic Church is going, we're against baby murder, and for a really good reason. Well, we can't really convert people into Christianity, if we're out about murdering them. So we're really against, this idea of the movement of baby murdering, and they've been solid on that from the very beginning. Now, so this creates an institutional bulwark. So one of the defenses of Catholicism is that listen, we're the Catholic Church. We've been thinking about this stuff for 2,000 years, and we're pretty solid on like A, B, C, and D. Listen, we're the religion of reason. We're gonna anything you say, we'll listen to, and we're gonna consider it. We're gonna weigh the pros and the cons. But we've been thinking about this stuff for 2,000 years now. I don't think we're gonna go with your newfangled inventions here. Now, of course, Martin Luther, was a priest, wanted to defrock a nun, didn't like the idea of, the Catholic Church to come up with chastity, which on reflection seems like a good idea, because look how bad it happens once you introduce sex into the seminars, right? We know that's a bad idea, so it's probably a good idea, but he didn't like that, and so he goes, oh, you defrock a nun, and next thing you know, we have the Protestant churches. I know, I know. He had valid criticism, a lot of them. I'm bastardizing that horribly, but anyway, he did have valid criticisms, at the time, but he also had a lot of crap. Anyway, the Catholic Church has these institutional bulwarks. So one of them being no baby murdering movement, right? And this institutional bulwark, just like when you walk into a Catholic church, there's 3 candles on the left, 3 candles on the right of the altar. You're in a Catholic church. You're in a universal church. It's just like McDonald's. You're in a McDonald's when you're in McDonald's because you're in the franchise, right? So you're in the franchise church, and there's a certain thing that they believe in, and one of them being no baby murdering. And so she tried, to get them, and she couldn't get them. She couldn't get the Italians. She couldn't get the Slavs. She couldn't get the religious Jews. She couldn't get down. But thanks to the Protestants, there she noticed that there was a wedge to get into. There was room to get into and to spread her evil. And so what she did is she targeted the black churches because they didn't have one size fit all McDonald's franchise like the Catholic Church does. She targets the individual ministers, and she sends a letter. She calls it the Negro Project, and she sends it around to the ministers. She tricks them into saying, "Oh, look, we'll tell the women it's not in your economic interest to have this baby. So baby murder this baby, A-word this baby, and you can go on, and you can be all you can be. You can be successful. Girl power. You can be a girl boss." Right. All right. So all that nonsense, and I've seen the letter, so you can't say Snopes. So Snopes, you are for dopes, because I've seen the letter before the internet disappeared. I got a copy of it around here somewhere. Margaret Sanger had signed at the bottom, sending it around to the ministers, to Dubois, and all the rest of them, trying to trick these poor Protestant churches into it. And it's why it's so endemic today. It is endemic today into the Democrat Party today. So you have the evil sin of now you got to think about it too. So here she is. She's doing all this evil. Her it's called the at that time it's called the in the early teens and 20s and 30s it's called the birth control. She had a paper, and then she had a like this so-called movement. But you think, how much of a jerk does she have to be that her husband, her estranged husband, turns her into the local forces, the local constabulary that day, because in her globe trotting that she's doing, she's also sneaking in contraband, and that in the case of 1920s IUDs, which probably were 10,000 times more dangerous than any kind of baby murdering procedure at the time if you're going to insert something like that in you. So she winds up doing 30 days for that. But how much of a jerk does she have to be that your husband turns you in for that, right? Well, anyway, she's created this movement, goes in front of the KKK, goes to a lot of Democrat organization meetings, also known as the KKK, because that's of course who filled the ranks of the KKK at that time, at least 17 times. They look at her like, you're just too crazy for us, lady. Hit the bricks, because she's about the exterminating of the black races, and all the KKK wanted to do was to get the blacks to stay in line where they know their place. So that evil of racism, the evil of destroying feminism, the anti-feminism, the anti-womanism, the anti-familyism of Margaret Sanger, she fully substitutes, becomes a bitch of Satan, and that particular evil in her gets translated onto the baby murdering movement at large, right? And then gets transferred today. So now, can I back that up? That the Democrat Party, the baby murdering movement is that it runs the Democrat Party? It has that evil is that evil in her got translated into the movement and now gets rung like a bell on all the soccer moms and all the other people who do the baby murdering today? Well, statistics does back that up. So basically there have been 70 million baby murderings, in this time, and America has undergone an outrageous proportion of them. 20 million plus are been of poor black babies. The now the percentage of blacks in America, there's 330 million blacks, 330 million Americans, 39 million of them or so are black. So you do the math on that. The 40% of all black babies are aborted today. 50% in some jurisdictions of abortions are black. They only represent 10, 11, 12, 13% of the population. You do the math on that. Margaret KKK Sanger is way more successful than any KKK members, because she's literally been successful with Planned Parenthood and the Democrat Party in exterminating the black race. Now, the statistics go like this. In 2003, that was a year that the blacks no longer were the largest minority in America. They became equal with the Hispanics, whatever the hell a Hispanic was. But even in 2003, the Census Bureau was playing games with what it was to be black. In that 39 million people that they considered black, that were equal to 39 Hispanics, whatever the hell a Hispanic is, in that 39 million, there were mulattoes, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because they do this thing now where they trace back your lineage, and so what is all American blacks are part white, so that's part of why paying them for slavery is so ridiculous, right? So it's like Angela Davis finds out that she was from a white slave owner. It's like, surprise, surprise. right? LeVar Burton was great, as Geordie. He did Reading Rainbow, and that was great. And Geordie, unfortunately he's a leftist nut job, but he did Geordie on Star Trek, which is the blind one, which was great, right? But it was also before all that Kunta Kinte in Roots, which is really not history, which is ridiculous, and it has that famous scene in it, which is hysterical. My brother keeps reminding me about it, where Kunta Kinte is in the wilds of Africa. He's being chased down by white boys. Now, as a white boy, raised in North Philadelphia, me and my brothers, took that as inspiration. It says yes, even though it's literally impossible, probably, to have white boys chase down black boys. At least in the schoolyard, we could, because Kunta Kinte got chased down and got caught, right? It doesn't happen. But anyway, that's not the way it happened anyway. It was, of course, black tribes in one section of that, rather than killing and exterminating all their rival tribe members, who was catching them and selling them off to the Portuguese. So Roots didn't happen. But all blacks, of course, in America have some white in them. Surprise, surprise. And so there's this huge category of mulattoes, whatever that meant. And then African blacks, who, as a community, want nothing to do with American blacks. And as I know, because my dear friends from Kenya, they are much more like my Italian immigrant grandparents than they are domestic blacks, and they, nothing to do with that community. That is all being lumped in there. And since that, so the next 10 years, you have 39 million blacks again, 50 million Hispanics. Then another decade, like 2023, last time I checked on the statistics, it's 39 million. But now that number is really, it's peaked. The domestic African American numbers have peaked and are fastly decreasing. And that number is made up by a larger number of Africans. Like I said, more immigrants like my grandparents, than domestic black people want nothing to do with, and larger and larger. So it's not really 39 million, but that's the number that they have. The census keeps putting in there because they don't want to admit this. And they're playing games with the statistics. And 62 million Hispanics. It's almost twice as many now. And the reason why is because, again, Hispanics have the institutional bulwark of Catholicism, where the black communities don't have that. And so what you have is the successful extermination and genocide of domestic blacks. Where is the black Einstein? Where is the black Madame Curie, the one black woman who could actually do something? Right? Because, as like I said, I don't want to get back into that. But where is the black Einstein? He's been, I can't say the A word, he's been baby murdered. So, baby murder. And so it's the same nonsense. This is your economic interest. Now, and so it's an evil. So it's an evil that these poor young black girls are being told, being sold that their economic interests are better to abort the baby. It's destroying, it's genociding, the eugenic genocide of a black race. And Margaret KKK Sanger is laughing down in hell, except she's really burning down in hell about it. And so that's the individual evil. And so what do you have today? You have the poor. You have the baby murdering. You have the baby murdering. So here would be the other end of the psycho history. So on the one end, you have the evils of Margaret Sanger on the movement, of the Democratic movement, on the Democratic Party, and the Planned Parenthood and the baby murdering industry, right? And then on this way, you have the out and out sociopaths and psychopaths selling off baby parts, sticking so-called fake doctors, sticking in instruments to paint thinners to whip around and just cut babies up, suck them out with vacuums. They're selling the baby parts for sale. You have the rich whites rights, and that's why all these Lexuses show up. Apparently, I didn't know this, but the great Dr. Taylor pointed it out today. When they're at the I almost said it again, the A word places, on the third week of December, that's when all the Lexuses show up there, and that's because that's when the young college girls, co-eds, come home, start crying to mom and dad. Oh, look, I'm pregnant, I'm knocked up, and mom, and it's never dad, it's mom, takes them to soccer mom takes them in the Lexus to the, I can't say the A word, clinic, the baby murdering clinic, and they murder the babies, and that's why you see all the Lexuses there in the third week of December, so that they have, so that they can go back and get their degree, and then go off and be a lonely spinster with nothing but cats. And they have their college degree though. You have those, and of course you have the poor young black girls who are being taught this nonsense too, that it's going to hold them back from their future. And so you have that evil metastasized, and of course you have the Hillary Clintons pushing it for money. You have the Democrat Party pushing it for money, because all those millions that they gave to good old Joey Biden, he's now turning around to turn the FBI to prosecute all the people who go and pray at these A-word clinics, baby murdering clinics, to prevent this. And you have the evil of the one woman of the Margaret Sanger, translated up, translated over on the movements, the Democratic Party and the baby murdering movement, and Planned Parenthood, down onto the evils of today. So psychohistory turns out to be a very powerful tool of analysis that you can use to describe history, from the 1900s all the way till today. So that's a good 100-year stretch. You can see the evil in the beginning and the individual person metastasize, carry on, and have the actual physical results, horrible as they are, into today. 60 million dead. You see unfortunately, you see so you see Aristotle was right. So you see you see that the great you see that Eleanor Roosevelt was wrong. Great minds talk about people and not ideas so much. Anybody can talk about ideas, but it's the people that create the universe, and it's the lack of femininity that Margaret Sanger's real sin was. When we become Satan's bitch, you reject family, you reject the great duty but role that you have as a woman to create children, to create people, to create a family, a world where men can orbit around. Aristotle had it right. It's in their private lives that are the reasons that they create these revolutions. That when we can then observe the horrific facts today. And just one more side note for that is, you see these creeps like, Anna Nicole, whatever her name is, from the Project 1619, and these narcissists today who think that they are the pinnacle of society, and they look down their noses as like snobs at all human history. And you get, this one reason why we're doing psychohistory is the lack of perspective, right? This is an evil age, and in the future they're going to look back at the murdering of 60 to 70 million babies, and they're going to go, you people were creeps. And they are, and they were going to be right about it too. And that's why we're delving into psychohistory, so that we can stop this, and we can look at ourselves and say, what's right and what's wrong. And just like you can look back at the founding fathers and say, oh, slavery was wrong, it wasn't half as bad as this nonsense, because they are literally destroying the future as they destroy these babies. They are literally destroying mankind as they're murdering these babies. And what's the bet? The Catholic Church's bet is that, yeah, you can go bad if they raise you, even if they raise you all right, yeah, you could turn into a Stalin. But more than not, if you raise them right, you give them the good news, they'll turn into do amazing things, as they have for the last 2,000 years, and increase, and keep increasing the optimistic arrow of history, so that we can get out of this nonsense. We can drag ourselves out of the primitive nonsense. So in the end, her virtueless woman and the virtueless women of that age translated into virtueless women of this age and the evils of this age. And Aristotle is right. Eleanor Roosevelt is wrong. And I will leave it with this from one of the most virtuous women I've ever met, my little illegal Italian grandmother, Philomena, who was not only an illegal immigrant, only had a 6th grade education, never went to college, never went to school, didn't even pass school, who had the best, the things that the finest wisdom, the wisdom of the mountains, escaping the famine of the mountains of Italy. Nothing more than a little Italian peasant, has the way to sum it up the best, in that the evil of Margaret KKK Sanger, and the evil of the Democrat Party, and the evil of Planned Parenthood, baby murdering of today, all boils down to one of her phrases, which was real simple: evil, misery loves company. And that's all it was. That's why Margaret Sanger was an evil creep to destroying all those families, because misery loves company, and she destroyed her life and her family, and so she wanted to destroy the lives and the family of all those women, and she did. And why Planned Parenthood today and those evil Harridans today, like Hillary Clinton and company today, are destroying all those poor women and all those poor families today, and all those poor babies, because misery loves company. So a virtuous woman, proving the point again, Do women create universes? I'll have to give her the idea on that one. I have to give her she's equal to Aristotle on that one. Maybe I'm wrong about the whole woman thing. Who knows? But I don't want to hear anything because I got 7 daughters and I've had 7 teenage daughters. So you don't like what I say? Go kiss a frog. But so that's psycho history lesson for today, my babies, my spiritual babies. And I have to say, peace out.